There are some watches that just get it. You mentioned the reference number SKX007, and, watch people nod.
Yeah.
It's a dive watch with a serious following. One that won't break the bank, but surprisingly might be climbing in value now. What's the secret sauce? What makes this particular Seiko so iconic?
Well, that's the deep dive we're getting into today. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, welcome.
We're really plunging into the story of the Seiko SKX007. It's a watch that, even though it's discontinued now, still holds this, well, legendary status for watch lovers.
Absolutely. And our guide for this exploration is a really good article called The Iconic Seiko SKX007 Dive Watch.
Right.
So our mission for you, listening in, is to really understand why this pretty affordable watch became such a giant to the world of horology. And maybe more importantly now, what its disappearance from production actually means for collectors and, enthusiasts.
Okay.
Okay, so to understand the SKX magic, where do we start with its history? It didn't just appear, right?
No, definitely not. To really appreciate the SKX, you kind of have to look back at Seiko's dive watch history, particularly the 1970s.
Okay.
I mean, the 62 MAS was huge, obviously, but the article rightly points towards the ref, 6105. That's the Captain Willard.
Ah, yes. Apocalypse Now.
Exactly. Worn in the movie, produced until 77. That watch really caught the public eye. It sort of cemented Seiko's reputation for these tough, reliable dive watches, a real cultural touchstone.
Okay, Captain Willard, yeah, it's a proper icon, no doubt.
Yeah.
So how did we get from that to the SKX? Was there a direct line?
Well, there was an intermediate step. The SKX didn't just pop up. Its immediate predecessor was the Seiko 7002.
The 7002.
Yeah, made from the late 80s up until 96, right when the SKX took over. And you can totally see the family resemblance.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
The black dial, those distinct white markers, maybe a little hint of orange text somewhere, those arrow hands.
Right.
And, of course, the rotating bezel. The 7002 was rated to 150 meters. So think of it as like the evolutionary step right before the main event.
Gotcha. 1996. That's the year the SKX007 arrives. And wasn't there another version, too?
Yeah, right alongside its equally famous sibling, the SKX009, the Pepsi bezel one.
The Pepsi, right. And the article mentioned the original price. Something like $430, which seems kind of crazy now.
It really does, but that was key to its appeal right from the start. It was this genuine, capable dive watch from Seiko, a respected in-house manufacturer, all for well under $1,000. And crucially, it met the ISO 6425 standards.
That ISO standard. It's a big deal, wasn't it?
Oh, hugely important back then. This was 1996, remember? Dive computers weren't quite the norm they are today.
Right.
That certification wasn't just, a sticker. It was a real mark of trust, reliability. If you were actually diving, that mattered. It meant it was a purpose-built tool.
So it wasn't just for show. It had the chops. Okay, let's get into the watch itself, the physical design, what makes it, it.
The case size is interesting. Officially, it's listed as 42.5 millimeters cross, measuring from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock. But the bezel itself is a bit smaller, maybe 41 millimeter. And the key thing is the lug-to-lug distance, only 45.5 millimeter.
Which is relatively short for that diameter.
Exactly. So combined with the bezel's visual weight, it actually wears smaller than you'd think. Feels more like a 40.5 or 41 millimeter watch on the wrist.
Oh.
It's about 13.3 millimeter thick, but again, the way the case sides slope down helps it seem a bit slimmer.
Yeah, it's really interesting how those little design things can make such a difference in how a watch actually feels when you wear it.
Yeah.
What about the finishing? How's it put together?
It's a pretty functional mix. You've got directional brushing on the top surfaces, helps cut down glare.
Right.
Then you have polished accents on the curved sides of the case, the edge of the bezel, and that signature Seiko screw-down crown.
The one at 4 o'clock?
That's the one, tucked away at 4, protected by crown guards.
Oh.
And that screw-down crown, plus the screw-down case back, that's what gets you the 200-meter water resistance.
It's essential for a dive watch.
And like the article says, the whole case shape, it just screams Seiko. It's instantly recognizable. That's a huge part of why it's so iconic.
Definitely. And that bezel. Got to talk about the bezel on a dive watch.
Absolutely. It's a 120-click unidirectional bezel. The article mentions it has a pretty satisfying solid action.
Good clicks.
Yeah, good clicks. Though it does note that some examples might have a tiny, tiny bit of back play. Not unusual at this price point, really.
Fair enough.
But generally, yeah, easy to grip, easy to turn, easy to line up with the markers on the dial and the chapter ring. Does the job.
Okay. Now, how does it actually attach to you?
Yeah.
The straps and bracelets. I hear they're a bit of a talking point.
That's one way to put it. The standard one is this black polyurethane strap, and the article describes it as pretty thick, quite long, and definitely stiff.
Doesn't sound super comfy?
Apparently not. The author liked the look of it as an object, but said it wasn't great for daily wear, especially if you have smaller wrists. Doesn't really soften up much either. But, and this is a big but, the SKX is known as a total strap monster.
Strap monster, love it.
Yeah. It just looks amazing on pretty much any aftermarket strap you throw at it. NATO straps, rubber, leather, anything. That versatility is a huge part of its appeal for enthusiasts. Lets you personalize it.
Right, a blank canvas.
Yeah.
What was the other option from Seiko? The bracelet?
The 5-link bracelet, yeah. The article kind of amusingly calls it cheap and jangly.
Ouch.
But then admits to really liking it, considers it maybe the best all-around option. It seems to have this unpretentious charm. It's not solid, like, expensive bracelets, but it works.
Okay. And the crystal. What's protecting the dial?
That's Hardlex, Seiko's own hardened mineral crystal. Now, it is more prone to scratches than sapphire.
Yeah, that's the trade-off.
But as the article points out quite well, a few scratches on a dive watch crystal, some might say that actually adds character, shows it's been used.
True. Tool watch aesthetic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And flip it over, you've got the classic Seiko wave engraved on the case back. Nice touch for the price.
Okay, so a solid functional package with that unmistakable Seiko DNA. Let's move to the dial, the face of the watch.
Right. So the dial itself is matte, black on the 007, blue on the 009.
Classic choices.
Yeah. And the hour markers are these simple, bold shapes, triangles and circles, printed in bright white and just loaded with Seiko's Lumi Bright.
Ah, the loom. Seiko loom is famous.
It really is. The article rightly calls it out as exceptional, often considered best in class. Seriously, regardless of the watch's price, it glows like a torch.
Nice. And the hands.
Polished handset, also filled with Lumi Bright. The second's hand is pretty distinctive too, with a black and white stick with that loomed circle on the counterbalance end.
Okay. And the date window?
Day and date at 3 o'clock. And it has that classic Seiko feature where Saturday shows up in blue text and Sunday is in red.
Oh, yeah, I like that little touch. Adds a bit of color. What about that ring on the very edge with the minute track?
That's the chapter ring. It's steeply angled, matches the dial color, it frames the dial nicely, but also gives you those precise, minute markers, helps with legibility.
Makes sense. And text on the dial. Minimal.
Very minimal. Just Seiko and automatic up top at 12. And then down at 6, the important bit, divers 200 meters printed in that orangey red color.
And that red text signifies?
That it meets the ISO 6425 dive watch standards, the ones we talked about earlier. It's like a badge of honor for a proper dive watch.
So form follows function, definitely, but with enough Seiko personality to make it, well, iconic. Okay, let's peek under the hood. The movement.
Right, the engine. Inside the SKX is the Seiko 7S26 caliber. It's an in-house movement, which is already pretty cool for the price.
Yeah.
And it actually debuted alongside the watch back in 1996.
Wow, so they were developed together, essentially.
It seems like it. Now, it's famous for being a workhorse, but it does have some quirks by modern standards. It doesn't hack. The second hand doesn't stop when you pull the crown out to set the time.
Okay, no hacking.
And it's not hand-windable either. You have to get it going with the Seiko shuffle.
Ah, the shuffle.
Right.
But reliable.
Incredibly reliable. And tough. That's its reputation. It's been used in tons of Seiko models over decades. Built to last.
Reliability is key, especially for a tool watch. What about the specs, performance-wise?
It beats at 3 Hertz. That's 21,600 vibrations per hour. Gives you about a 41-hour power reserve.
Okay.
Accuracy. Well, the article notes it's not a chronometer. You're typically looking at maybe 9:06 to plus 13 seconds a day, something like that. It can vary.
So not super precise, but dependable.
Exactly. And the author actually mentions finding the lack of hacking and hand winding almost part of its quirky charm. Like, it's part of its simple, robust character.
I see that.
And you have to remember, when this came out in 96, Seiko's newer 4R movements, the ones that do hack and hand wind, weren't really around yet, or at least not widespread in this price range. So the 7S26 made perfect sense. It was the logical, dependable choice for its time.
A movement built for the long haul, not necessarily for winning accuracy contests. Got it. Now, the article shifts gears a bit, talks about the personal experience of owning one. This is where it gets interesting, right? The connection people have with these things.
Oh, absolutely. That's often the real story. The author talks about buying his SKX maybe 10 years ago when he was in law school, paid around $230.
Wow, $230, great price.
Yeah, but still a significant buy for a student back then. He remembers thinking that stiff polyurethane strap was just huge.
the strap strikes again.
Yeah, so he bought the bracelet pretty quickly. But the more important thing he remembers is this nostalgic feeling he got from the dial. Said it reminded him of his dad's Rolex Submariner.
Whoa, that's quite an association. An affordable Seiko evoking the image of, like, the Grail dive watch.
It really is. And he felt the SKX, because it was so straightforward and functional, it captured that essential tool watch spirit that you find in much more expensive watches.
The essence of it.
Exactly. It achieved this kind of timeless quality, almost like a vintage piece, even though the SKX isn't really that old yet. He even tried it on different straps, like leather, maybe going for that rugged look.
And then his wife wore it for a while. I liked that part.
Yeah, that was a great bit. Really shows how versatile and appealing it is. For about a year and a half, it was basically her watch.
Wow.
Took it traveling, swimming. It even picked up a noticeable scratch on the dial during her time with it. And apparently, despite the 42.5 millimeter size, she found it totally comfortable.
That's cool. So it became a shared object.
Totally. Eventually, she got her own watches, and the SKX came back to him.
It sounds like it became more than just a watch by then. It was carrying memories.
Precisely. And while he admits it's not something he wears all the time now,
Right.
it has huge sentimental value. It's his go-to gym watch or weekend beater. And those battle scars, like that scratch, he sees them as reminders of those times, those shared experiences.
That's the best part of owning a watch sometimes.
Absolutely. And he even mentions wanting to pass it down to his kids someday. Because it's tough, maybe even, as he puts it, unbreakable. There's this real appreciation for having owned it while it was still being made, knowing that, they just don't make them like this anymore.
Yeah, that feeling. It definitely resonates in the watch community. Which brings us neatly to the SKX's legacy. And where it sits now on the market, it's really shifted from being just an affordable workhorse to something else, hasn't it?
It really has. The SKX is kind of a rare thing, an affordable watch that genuinely became iconic. What's remarkable is its appeal even to people who own, super high-end watches.
Right, it transcends price brackets.
It does, and the article makes a really good point comparing it to vintage Rolex Submariners, as those have shot up in price, becoming inaccessible to most.
Yeah, stratospheric prices now.
The SKX, for a long time, kind of kept that robust, functional tool watch heritage accessible, and the fact that Seiko makes everything in-house just adds to its street cred.
So what happened when Seiko pulled the plug? Discontinued it?
Well, discontinuation often lights a fire under the collector market, as the article notes.
Yeah, suddenly everyone wants one.
Pretty much. The author mentions seeing SKX007s with the Japanese J serial number, supposedly slightly better finish, though debatable, selling for over $1,000 now.
Over $1,000.
Yeah.
For an SKX.
Yeah. And the K serial 009s, the Pepsi ones, going for mid $500 or more. He personally finds paying over $1,000 for a new one hard to swallow, given its roots.
Understandable.
But admits you can still find decent deals secondhand if you look around. But yeah, that price jump just highlights how collectible it's become.
That is a massive leap from $430, let alone $230. Has Seiko offered anything as a direct replacement?
Sort of. They introduced the Seiko 5 sports line, often called the 5KX range, the SRPD series.
The 5KX.
These are usually under $250, great value, and they definitely borrow heavily from the SKX's design language.
But they're not quite the same, are they?
No, there are key differences. Water resistance is down to 100 meters, not 200. There's no screw-down crown, which is a big one for dive watch purists. And they have an exhibition case back showing the movement.
Which some people feel isn't very tool watch.
Exactly. So while the 5KX fills a similar price point and looks similar, many enthusiasts feel it doesn't quite capture that same rugged, purpose-built essence of the original SKX.
So the SKX really was unique.
Yeah, it seems that way. The SKX007, the 009, and the smaller SKX002. The article calls them relics of the past now, in a way. And it points out we're actually getting close to the 30th anniversary of the SKX line launching.
30 years. Wow. Makes you think. It really is the end of an era. Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways from our deep dive on the Seiko SKX007.
Well, I think it's clear the SKX007 hit this perfect storm. It had the rugged, functional design, the genuine ISO dive watch specs.
The credentials.
Right. The reliable in-house movement, and maybe most importantly, that incredible affordability. That combination opened it up to so many people and cemented its place. Even now it's gone. Its legacy in watch history feels totally secure.
A lasting legacy, for sure. Okay, on that note, here's a final thought for you to ponder. With the SKX's price bouncing around on the secondary market now,
Right.
where does its real value lie? Is it in the collectability, the potential investment? Or is it in those personal stories, the adventures, the scratches it picked up along the way? What does the fact that we still love this relatively simple, tough tool watch tell us about, our connection to objects and maybe even how we think about time itself?
That's a great question. Something definitely worth thinking about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.